There are increasing reports of sudden and unexpected passings among young people in mainland China. On April 6th, a 35-year-old doctor from the Second People's Hospital of Yuan City, Zhejiang Province, unexpectedly passed away while resting between two surgeries. Many doctors on the mainland have noted on social media that cardiovascular and cerebrovascular diseases are affecting younger age groups, and sudden medical emergencies among the youth are becoming more frequent. A 35-year-old doctor in Zhejiang passed away while resting between operations. Jimu News reported that on April 7th, the Second People's Hospital of Yuan City issued an obituary. Chen Jie, the chief physician of the hospital's orthopedics department, passed away at 2:30 a.m. on April 6th at the age of 35, due to sudden respiratory and cardiac failure during work. Despite the hospital's full rescue efforts, he unfortunately could not be revived. A staff member at the hospital revealed that on the day of the incident, Chen Jie had just completed a surgery and was taking a break. As he was preparing for the next operation, he suddenly suffered respiratory and cardiac arrest and sadly could not be saved. The 33-year-old daughter of former Hong Kong chief executive Leung Chun-ying passed away suddenly. On the evening of March 8th, Xi'an, the 33-year-old daughter of former Hong Kong chief executive Leung Chun-ying, passed away unexpectedly. Leung Chun-ying later confirmed the incident, stating that his daughter passed away very suddenly. According to Hong Kong 01, at 10:40 p.m. on March 8th, police received a report from an employee at a service department on number 1 Aid Street, Yuan, saying that a female resident had been found unconscious on the floor. When paramedics arrived, they found the woman lying on the bed and pronounced her dead at the scene. The exact cause of death will be determined following an autopsy. The deceased was identified as Leung Chun-ying, the second daughter of Leung Chun-ying, who currently serves as vice chairman of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. At around 1 a.m. on March 9th, Leung Chun-ying, accompanied by plainclothes police officers, arrived at the apartment. Her sister, Leung Chun-ying, also arrived in the early hours and left shortly afterward. At around 5 a.m., the body was transferred to the mortuary. At around the same time, Leung Chun-ying confirmed the passing of his daughter in a post on Facebook. Previously, on October 1, 2014, Leung Chun-ying posted a photo of a thick necklace on Facebook, remarking that her beautiful clothes, shoes, and jewelry were all purchased with the money of Hong Kong taxpayers. Leung Chun-ying, who was backed by Zheng Qinghong, the second-in-command of the Jiang Zemin faction of the Chinese Communist Party, was accused of using gangs to destabilize Hong Kong during his tenure as chief executive. He was said to have intensified social tensions, including collaborating with Zhang Dejiang, chairman of the National People's Congress and a key Jiang faction figure, to exploit political reform issues in 2014 to stir unrest. He was also accused of attempting to create a violent crackdown, fueling the Hong Kong independence narrative, and condoning the Hong Kong Youth Care Association's harassment of Falun Gong practitioners. Doctors in Jiangsu, cardiovascular and cerebrovascular diseases are affecting younger people. Zhang Yaojun, chief physician at the Department of Cardiology at Suzhou Tumor Hospital, Suzhou Third Hospital, said in his Douyin video on March 24th, "I didn't expect cardiovascular disease to be affecting people in their 20s. He mentioned treating a 26-year-old unmarried patient the previous week. Although the patient survived, a stent had to be inserted. His elderly mother tearfully begged the doctors to save her son, which was heartbreaking." In the comments under the video, many netizens shared their own experiences. "I was 29 and had a stent placed. I nearly didn't make it. I was 27, and a myocardial bridge caused ischemia, which led to palpitations and chest tightness. Last year at 26, I had a myocardial infarction. During a checkup this year, a 75% narrowing was found in my anterior descending artery. I was born in 1994, had myocarditis at 21, and a subarachnoid hemorrhage at 24. Increasing reports of unexpected losses among those born in the 1980s and 1990s in Changsha, Hunan. On March 21st, a Douyin blogger named Changsha's son-in-law picks up a good house said in a video that a friend working in the funeral industry shared a worrying trend. In 2024, farewell ceremonies for people born in the 1980s and 1990s handled by his friend had doubled compared to the previous 3 years. The youngest case was just 28 years old, and most were between 35 and 40. Sudden cardiac-related incidents accounted for 67%, and late-stage cancer made up 21%. A doctor blogger known as Zhang On the Walker captioned one of his videos, "There are now more and more sudden losses, and the victims are getting younger. In most cases, efforts to save them are unsuccessful." Since March, sudden deaths among police officers, professionals, and internet influencers in mainland China have drawn public attention. On April 6th, the husband of Yang Qina, a 38-year-old internet personality in Fujian, announced she had passed away from sudden hypoglycemia. Yang was featured by CCTV and Xinhua and appeared on shows like Chinese Love. Ding Rui, 41, director of Harbin's Justice Bureau, died of a sudden heart attack on April 1st. Yuan, 32, an e-commerce researcher, passed away from cardiac arrest on a bus in Shenzhen. Li Jinyong, 51, a Zhengzhou party official, and Qiwen Liang, a Xinjiang police director, also died suddenly. Other cases include journalist Li Hui, 56, influencer Xie Weiqian, 25, scientist Liu Yongfeng, 48, lawyer Xu Songxian, 46, and project manager Chen Ruikui, 45, etc. Netizens are sharing similar stories: sudden collapses, young people dying after minor symptoms, and questions about rising heart attacks and strokes in the young. Some blame COVID, citing widespread infections and long lines at crematoriums. Authorities insist 99% of recent cases are flu-related, but public skepticism is growing. Offshore RMB falls to historic low. The offshore RMB fell to its lowest level ever after the People's Bank of China relaxed its tight control over the RMB and the United States imposed a 104% tariff on a variety of Chinese goods. The offshore RMB fell as much as 1.1% to 7.429 RMB per dollar in late New York trading on Tuesday, April 8th, a record low. Earlier in the day, the People's Bank of China set the RMB central parity rate at 7.2038 RMB per dollar, the lowest since September 2023. This is the first time since U.S. President Donald Trump was elected in November that the RMB central parity rate has fallen below the 7.20 mark, which investors see as a soft red line for official willingness to move the RMB. The onshore RMB fell to its lowest level since September 2023. We think the pace of devaluation will accelerate, and China has also signaled more flexibility in the so-called central parity rate, said Arup Chatterjee, managing director of macro strategy and emerging markets at Wells Fargo in New York. It will be a controlled, sustained devaluation, which could send the offshore RMB to 7.50 per dollar or even higher, Chatterjee said. Devaluing the RMB is seen as an option for Beijing to make exports more attractive, a key driver of economic growth that is now under more pressure due to trade tensions. But letting the RMB depreciate sharply is a difficult decision because it could increase bearish bets on the economy, exacerbate capital outflows, anger the United States, and dim the prospects of any trade talks. For China, on the other hand, keeping the RMB artificially strong could curb exports, further hitting an already struggling economy. In addition, the subsequent release of pressure to devalue the RMB could also lead to increased volatility in financial markets. Where the People's Bank of China will draw the next line of defense remains an open question, but we at least know that the bar has now been raised, said Tiffany Wang, a foreign exchange analyst at J.P. Morgan. China's Ministry of Commerce said on Tuesday that if the United States insists on imposing new tariffs, China will fight to the end. According to the official record of the call with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Chinese Premier Li Qiang said that China has sufficient policy tools to fully offset any negative external shocks. Li Chang criticized the United States' punitive actions as unilateralism, protectionism, and economic coercion. With tit-for-tat tensions with China only set to intensify, it makes sense that the yuan would take a hit, said Helen Given, a foreign exchange trader at Monex. We are watching for any signs of deliberate devaluation, but that doesn't appear to be happening yet.
In order to achieve the loan target, banks have recently gone all out, reminding users to borrow money in different ways every day, begging for help everywhere, fearing that you will not borrow money. Hello, I am Xiao Li from China Merchants Bank, Ping An Bank Agricultural Bank. I have prepared loans ranging from 300,000 to 1 million yuan for you. Do you need it? I don't know if you have received a lot of bank loan calls recently. Anyway, I receive them almost every day. The frequency is so high that some people post complaints online and think they have encountered some new type of fraud. If you don't receive a call, don't think you have escaped. There are also full-screen text message bombardments. The magical thing is that everyone seems to have received a task. The text messages sent by major banks are all pre-arranged, and they are exactly the same. To help the economic recovery, our bank will once again increase your credit limit to 498,000 yuan, and you can borrow and repay at any time within 3 years. The bank also offers a lot of preferential activities, one more than the other. It is said that many new ways of playing have been introduced, such as the group buying mode of attracting new fission. If you want a lower interest rate, you have to gather more people to enjoy it. Some people can't find so many partners in real life, so they go to online platforms to get loans together. The 4 major commercial banks generally have a minimum interest rate of 2.8%, while large commercial banks and local banks have a minimum interest rate of 2.6%. Some small banks have a minimum interest rate of 2.5%. If you have a professional halo, such as a teacher, civil servant, employee of a public institution, or a large factory, you can get a lower loan interest rate. Chinese banks are crazy, lending desperately. In the past, loans required borrowers to provide some bank statements or proof of employment. Now, it's so crazy that as long as you are a living person and your account is not currently overdue, it doesn't matter if it was overdue in the past, they can lend you money. In order to lend money, banks are really going crazy. In fact, banks have always had lending tasks, and there are special departments responsible for making phone calls. But the frequency and pressure of loans are not as great as this year. There are 2 reasons why ordinary people are being chased for loans this year. First, expanding domestic demand and boosting consumption are definitely a main line of the national strategy in 2025. After Trump came to power, everyone knew that foreign trade business was not as good as before, and banks were worried about risks and were not so willing to lend to some small factory owners. The focus in the future can only be on consumption and expanding domestic demand. On March 16th, the state specially issued a report on the Special Action Plan to Boost Consumption, which I believe everyone has seen. This report shows the country's determination to expand domestic demand when external demand is blocked. The report also clearly mentions how to boost consumption, how to increase income, how to ensure consumption, how to stabilize the real estate market and stock market, how to increase everyone's property income, etc. Especially boosting consumption. Let everyone participate in it. But now society is facing a very embarrassing situation. The elderly have money and the banks have huge deposits, but they don't spend. Young people have a strong desire to consume, but they don't have the money to consume. You can see how much discussion Xiaomi's latest car, the SU7 Ultra, has caused. It has become the dream car in the hearts of the new generation of young people. Even if the price is as high as more than 500,000 yuan, young people want to own one. Since everyone is not so keen on having children and buying houses, it is always okay to encourage you to consume. Young people have time, desire, and energy. The only thing they lack is money. This is easy to say. Banks can cooperate with lending and borrowing money. Before the state issued a report on boosting domestic demand on March 16th, the Financial Supervision Bureau had already taken a step ahead. It encouraged banks and financial institutions to increase the issuance of personal consumer loans under the premise of controllable risks. The meaning is very clear. Banks and other financial institutions should fully cooperate with the state's major policy to boost consumption. So recently, we have seen banks going crazy and lending crazily. Especially in auto financial services, extending the consumer service chain to include car washing and refueling, as well as key consumer areas such as home decoration and home appliances. For the above industries, banks basically do not have too many requirements for the qualifications of lenders, and the review is passed in seconds. Second, China has entered a new round of large-scale water release cycle. The central bank has repeatedly emphasized that it will adopt a loose monetary policy in 2025, and will even cut interest rates and reserve requirements when the opportunity arises. Once the reserve requirement ratio is lowered, banks will have a large amount of funds in their hands, and the purpose of this money is to circulate in the market. In addition to boosting consumption, the purpose of keeping this money in the market is to stabilize the real estate market and stock market and increase everyone's property income. In order to attract more people to borrow money and make money through money, both deposit interest rates and loan interest rates have been declining in the past 2 years, from more than 5 points to just over 2 points today. Many people may think that the interest rate has dropped so much, but ordinary people are still unwilling to borrow money when they are unemployed and laid off, and the interest rate reduction is useless. But, in fact, the real benefit of interest rate cuts and reserve requirement ratio cuts goes to those who dare to borrow money. Because most lower-level ordinary people do not understand economics, the only way they know to resist inflation is to deposit money in the bank and earn some fixed interest. But now, in order to encourage everyone to spend money and invest, the fixed interest rate has fallen to 1.6%, and lower-level people no longer have a channel to resist inflation. On the contrary, those who dare to borrow money can borrow at a low cost to invest in some potential assets, leverage up, and accelerate their income. In fact, each round of large-scale flooding is actually robbing the wealth of this group of people who only put their money in bank deposits and then giving the money to those who dare to spend in the form of inflation. For so many years, whether ancient or modern, Chinese or foreign, it has never changed. China's economy is shaken, and the CCP scrambles to protect the market. Affected by the U.S. reciprocal tariff storm, China's stock market plummeted on Monday, April 7th. The Shanghai Composite Index dropped below the 3,100-point mark, marking the largest single-day decline in 5 years. The Hang Seng Index plunged 13.22%, the steepest fall since 1997. Additionally, the onshore RMB slipped below 7.31, hitting a 2-month low. Notably, CICC, known as the Financial SASAC, announced a rescue plan. But the market was unresponsive. The lingering failure of past rescue efforts may be difficult to shake off. A-shares and Hong Kong stocks plunge as CCP's national team intervenes. All 3 major A-share indices experienced sharp declines on Monday. At the close, the Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Chi-Next indices fell 7.34%, 9.66%, and 12.5% respectively. The Shanghai Composite Index dropped below the 3,100-point threshold, the biggest single-day drop in 5 years. Meanwhile, the Hang Seng Index fell 13.22%, marking its worst one-day performance since 1997. As of Monday's close, the Shanghai Composite Index stood at 3,096.58 points, down 245.43 points, 7.34%. The Shenzhen Component Index closed at 9,364.5, down 1,001.23 points, 9.66%, and the Chi-Next Index settled at 1,807.21, down 258.2 points, 12.5%. The combined turnover of the Shanghai and Shenzhen stock markets reached approximately 1.587799 trillion yuan, RMB, an increase of 450.179 billion yuan from the previous trading day. At the close, only 106 stocks rose, while 5,284 declined. On April 2nd, U.S. President Trump announced a 34% tariff hike on Chinese imports. In response, the Chinese Communist Party announced reciprocal tariffs on U.S. goods entering China, effective Thursday, April 10th. Half an hour before Monday's close, at 2:30 p.m., CCP state media released a report citing authoritative sources, stating that Central Huijin Investment Limited was actively conducting market stabilization operations. 15 minutes before the close, Central Huijin officially announced its firm confidence in the development prospects of China's capital market. It stated it fully recognizes the current allocation value of A-shares and has once again increased its holdings of exchange-traded open-end index funds, ETFs. It pledged to continue doing so in the future to resolutely maintain market stability. Central Huijin Investment Limited, a wholly owned subsidiary of China Investment Corporation, was established by the State Council and is often referred to as the Financial SASAC. It is one of several national team investors backed by the Chinese Communist Party, tasked with stabilizing the market during turbulent times. Exchange-traded funds, ETFs, are investment funds that track the performance of an underlying index and are traded on stock exchanges. Investors can buy and sell ETFs just like stocks and typically receive returns that closely mirror those of the index.